In tutorials here on YouTube, you'll see that people are using a table in order to show you how to flick the strings one over top of each other. The reality is, ladies and gentlemen, is that you don't want to be working with the table. It's kind of awkward to be sitting it down and kind of looking at it and flipping up, flipping up. And realistically, behind the scenes, that when we are working on it, we are actually sitting with this on our laps, just like so. Okay, so down, and what we want to do, we just work in a configuration like a paddle wheel of a boat, and we just keep turning and turning and turning. This is loom knitting for the basics on getting started, and I want to show you how to do looming, but I also want you to consider a few things. As for example, using different types of wool makes a huge difference on the actual type of project that you're going to be using. Loom knitting usually requires thick wool, like you can see here, but unfortunately it's quite pricey. So I'm going to show you 4 ways to use the cheap wool in order to create the effects that you see here. Choosing the ring is actually pretty simple. The size of the exterior diameter, it will be the size of the exterior of your actual project. So if you put the hat back inside, you'll see that the hat exterior is the same distance all the way around. So when going to measure on what size you want to make, simply just put one of these on top of somebody's head or your own and then determine that size. So I would estimate that the small ring of the 4 that you get in the package from Walmart would be babies, it would be children's, and then adults, and the big one was for whatever project that you want to do with that. Loom knitting, just because it's in a circle, doesn't mean that you have to do a complete circle. You can actually do a partial of the ring in order to create flat panels such as scarves. Loom knitting around these particular rings requires a little bit of extra care, especially when choosing your wool. And when we zoom over here, is that we have different kinds of wool, and you know, I'm one of these people that are included, is that I don't have a lot of money to spend on wool, and so this is the Super Value Bernat wool, and sometimes they use Red Heart. And unfortunately, with this kind of material, when you go to look at it, it's pretty thin, and so when you go to actually loom it on your knitting apparatus there, it actually makes really poor knitting. So you have to really give consideration. And you know what? I'm not willing to settle for that. I've come up with 4 ways that you can actually knit with these things with the cheaper wool. And this kind of wool here and this thick stuff here produces very good quality hats, just like so. And this is only 1 strand. But we don't always have the luxury of that. And sometimes the colors that they have available in this thick stuff is not always perfect. So that's when I've come up with 4 different ways. So I've done many different baby hats here that I'm going to show you. The hats in the background, such as this baby's hat and this adult's hat, is actually 3 different strings all mixed together. So you take 3 strings and you work it around your ring as if it's 1. And the advantage to doing this is that it creates a very thick, heavy hat. If you go to pull it apart, you won't see any distance in between, and it's a really great way of creating a project that will pretty well not shrink and keep its shape for a very, very long time. The disadvantage to working with this kind of thing is that you need to have 3 balls of wool in order to do it. So if you wanted to do the same color, such as this green, you will have to make 2 secondary balls of wool on the side, plus use or even 3 secondary balls, or just use 2 and then use the actual main ball of the wool if you were actually going to be doing that. I know that's orange, but it's just a demonstration. So you do 2 small balls and then use 1 string coming from the main one. The advantage of doing it from the main one and not creating 3 separate balls is that you don't have any waste left over, because whatever you don't use from these balls will basically be left over. So it is kind of inconvenient. It requires a little bit of extra setup, but as you can see in the background, it's very well worth it if you were trying to do this kind of effect. The other advantage to doing it, the 3 lines, is that you can choose 3 different colors that are your favorite, and will cause your material to intermix just like so. It creates a random fun look, and it will create a project that is certainly your own. These 2 hats are exactly the same pattern as well, but instead of using 3 strings together, we've only used 2. So if you're doing a major ball of wool, do one of those, and do a secondary ball on the side, and you got to make sure you leave enough on your secondary in order to not have any cut strings in the middle of your project. Now when you're doing something like this, you'll have to have a main ball for each one of the colors plus a secondary ball in order to make the colors actually line up properly. Or if you want to go the simple route, just grab 2 balls of wool, doesn't matter what color, your favorite colors I would think, and then just work them together into this actual hat. So that would be the best way, and the advantage to this kind of hat, it's easier to work with because there's only 2 strings instead of 3. It has a little more elasticity than the actual ones that are using 3-ply or 3 strings, and it gives a very, very nice effect. And if anything, I would do hats probably in this configuration the most over the 4 of them that I'm going to show. So that's style number 2. Now the next 2 are your last 2, and what this one is here on this side is that what I've done is I've gone around the peg twice in order to create this look. And what this does is if I pull this apart, you're going to see a line right in between that connects them together, and basically we're using 1 string, so you should only see 1 line in between, where the other materials that we use, you would see 2 or 3 strings connecting in between. By wrapping it twice around the post, you get a very nice thick knitted look on the outside of it, and it gives a very, very nice effect. And you can change your colors accordingly on the inside in order to match it. Going to the sister one that's directly beside, this is 1 string using on the peg, and you can see the elasticity on this one is the biggest one of all, and you can basically almost see through this thing when it is separated, and it can be very a loosey-goosey kind of hat. It will not probably hold its shape too long, but it allows somebody to grow into it if they are growing, and if not, you're pretty well out of luck if you've made it the wrong size and it's overstretched. So I would not recommend doing this kind of material in there, but that's what I would think. But this one here is also 1 string. It's using the thicker wool, and you can't even tell. You can just see that there's basically lines, but you really can't tell the actual knitted formation to it. And by using the thick balls of wool, you created a hat that has elasticity but also pulls back together, and is a lot better than using the thin stuff. So let me take you through a demonstration. They're going to be here on YouTube on how to do the different configurations. So you have 3 strings that are made together. We have 2 strings that are made together. We also have 1 string in a different kind of configuration that is done, and then another just 1 string, a loosey-goosey kind of look, and it's also so 3 string, 2 string, 1 string, but with the variation, and just 1 string normally. And let me take you through a demonstration of that. So you'll find those here on YouTube.